particularly nice for us to have so many clients with us here for this program. I think after all is said and done, we will have about 70 clients join us here throughout the program. And that's just really gratifying for Reed Smith. We at the law firm went through a strategic planning process that we finished last year, and a critical part of that strategic plan, one of the 4 main strategic drivers of the plan, was our objective to achieve a greater diversity and inclusiveness in our law firm, greater diversity in our talent base, and a greater culture of inclusiveness. And as we worked through the plan, and as we worked through that particular component of the plan, I noticed that there were 2 things going on that seemed kind of contradictory, but really aren't. On the one hand, we have a conviction at Reed Smith, right in our core, that the more diverse our talent base is and the more inclusive our culture is, the better we are able to serve our clients. We know that there is that connection, that correlation exists, and we have that conviction. So there, on the one hand, there is that certainty. On the other hand, there's a humility that came along with the process at Reed Smith, simply to know that we think we're good at this, but we know we don't have all the answers. And we know that in our own culture of improvement, there's so much more that we can do. I got some great advice last night in the room next door at the reception from one of you who said to me, look, just meet your clients on the field of shared values. Just meet them there and be really open and transparent about what you believe and about what's important to the law firm. And then listen and then learn, and everything will be okay. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm really glad that you're here with us.
So I wanted you to ask yourself why you're here. You're probably asking, why am I here? I'm here because I believe. I believe in the power of change. I believe that we can all make a difference. We're here, as Sandy said, we're here to create a culture. We're here to transform our culture to a culture of inclusion, a culture where we value everyone's diversity. You know, 10 years, 15 years ago, people were saying, hey, John, I'm colorblind. It's not enough to be colorblind. We have to go beyond that. We have to be able to appreciate and value and reward and respect everyone's diversity. If we can create a culture where people know that Reed Smith is a place where whatever you are, wherever you come from, is valued, we will create a culture of inclusion. And that's a place where people will want to be. That'll help us with our recruiting. That'll help clients. Clients that respect that will say, hey, I like that place, Reed Smith. That's a place that's very inclusive. I like their culture. And if we all can do that, we'll be successful. But you know, I'm conscious of, I go to a lot of conferences. I think a lot of you go to conferences like this. We want to see change, right? And in order to make change, I say you just have to do one thing, okay? Just do one thing, starting today, do one thing differently than what you normally do. It's just like a New Year's resolution, you know? You start off, try to do one thing. And if you do it over and over again, it becomes a habit. And if you do that one thing differently, if everybody here does one thing differently starting today, we will make change.
Change with respect to diversity and inclusion requires a lot of effort and conscious, intentional focus. And some of you are leaders here at the firm, some of you are leaders in your other organizations, and we want to provide you with some advice from people who've been in the trenches on how to create change in this area. Give us a little bit more context on the work that you're doing with respect to diversity and inclusion. Michelle?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. So I've been the Chief Diversity Officer at Prudential for the last 5 years. And in that role, it's been a whirlwind. I literally launched a D&I strategy for the company when I took the role 5 years ago. And it was a very interesting strategy. It was funny, I stepped into the job thinking, I'm the Chief Diversity Officer, this is all me, I've got this. And I remember quickly realizing that, wait a minute, I can't do this alone. This is going to take the entire organization. So the strategy that we set up literally has right across the top leader-led and business-owned. So I don't own it, but the leaders of the company, the entire enterprise, own the strategy, and I am there to support them in those efforts.
We have a goal at BP where we want to have a workforce, and that workforce includes our employees, our contractors, and you all at Reed Smith as our ambassadors and the vendors that we hire. We want an entire workforce that's reflective of the communities that we operate in, wherever we are. And we're a global multinational. It means different things in different geographies and areas. But it's all underpinned by a business case. D&I is not just some fluff kind of utopian kind of concept for us. It's grounded in the business case where you're really trying to get the best talent. And there's kind of two reasons for that. One is there's empirical evidence. John, you mentioned it in your opening. Diversity in teams, diversity of thought, diversity of perspectives on teams gives you the best results. And there's a lot of data out there that is coming around now, and I can tell you in the boardroom that value of different perspectives that you need to come to the best decision, that value is recognized in boardrooms around the world. And at the executive ranks, I think people see that, and you see that evidence.
I come to this from a totally different perspective. As a judge, most of you are familiar that I have to decide things based on precedent. In the law, the concept of precedent has two meanings. First, precedent may refer to the precedential case. That is, the case that furnishes the basis for determining later cases. Second, precedent may refer to the overall making of the law by a court in recognizing and applying new rules. Having spent much of my career dealing with precedent, it shouldn't be a surprise that in preparing to speak on the panel regarding the topic of driving diversity, that I began to frame the idea of legal diversity in terms of precedent. In my mind, the concept of precedent is two. So you too can divide the art of driving and leading diversity in two parts. First, to drive diversity in the profession, we must individually strive to break professional barriers. In this way, we can work to make each of our own careers precedential for those that follow us. Personally, though I've never considered myself a trailblazer, I do recognize that my presence as the first woman to be chief judge of the district court, as well as the first African American woman to be appointed to the court, is kind of a precedent. I hope that my career will be for the diverse attorneys that follow a base on which they may build their own careers, much like a precedential case acts as the base on which later cases are built. In short, to lead and to drive diversity in our own profession requires that each of us act as judges, not of the law, but rather as judges of people. As judges of people, we must ensure that we not merely focus our attention on following and setting legal precedent, but instead focus on setting social precedent. In practice, I challenge each of you who may be in a position of leadership to ensure that your law firm, your office, or whatever your professional group is as strongly committed to setting social precedent as you are committed to serving or setting legal precedent.
I have a friend who was an executive director at one of our offices. He uses a wheelchair. He goes into restaurants, and his first line is always, if I can't get into your restaurant, you're not just losing my meal, you're losing the 6 family members and friends that I'm bringing with me. So this relationship building is very important. As a matter of fact, I heard the chairman of Reed Smith this morning, which in some very good remarks. Reed Smith, I think in its materials, brands itself as a global relationship firm. Well, that kind of says it all. It's not a global law firm. It's a global relationship firm.
Thank you very much to Reed Smith and leaders for inviting me here today. I have to say I wasn't aware really of how long we have come forward with the legal profession in advancing equal opportunities, and it was really inspiring to hearing all the panels today. And I have to say, as a former lawyer myself, I was really proud. The UN Global Compact has really developed a number of work streams with UN agencies to explore how business impacts the rights of specific groups. So we have worked on the women's empowerment principles with UN Women, on the children's rights and business principles with UNICEF and Save the Children, on the rights of indigenous people with the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And underpinning these work streams and guides are the dimension of respect and support of human rights and an understanding of the unique role different stakeholders can play as value creators for business. And so in this context, the UN Global Compact has been working closely with the International Labour Organization and other experts to develop this guide for businesses on the rights of persons with disabilities. And we see here the objectives of the guide. The guide aims at explaining the role that business can play in advancing the rights of persons with disabilities in alignment with the CRPD and relevant frameworks. And what really sets this publication apart, probably from others that you may have seen already, is its human rights-based approach. And so really looking at the broader rights set out in the CRPD and how they are relevant to business and can fit within the company's global, broader human rights strategy.
Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Gross, as you've heard, the Chancellor of the Philadelphia Bar Association. On behalf of our 12,000 members, I welcome you to Philadelphia and applaud Reed Smith for this impressive achievement and program. I, along with Robert White, Executive Director of California Minority Council Program, and Sandra Yamate, the Chief Executive Officer of the Institute for Inclusion in the Legal Profession, volunteered to be the independent judges for Reed Smith's first Quality and Inclusion Champion Award. The nominations were made by Reed Smith attorneys and were extremely impressive. Each nominee had commendable practices worthy of recognition. And Dan's going to say a little bit about each of the nominees, and then we'll go on to the winner.
Great. So there can only be one winner, but there were 3 finalists who were announced, and they're in your brochure today. If you look at the 3 finalists, I think what they all share in common is a focus on inclusion, not just diversity, and creating an environment that's embedded across the organization where they have an inclusive culture, where they get the most out of all of their employees. They also all referenced and talked about cognitive diversity, so looking not just at tick boxing for characteristics, but really looking for diverse thought within their organizations. They all talked about nurturing a talent pipeline, both into the organization and up and through it, as well as at their law firms. They all had a dedication to the profession, and they all talked about the business case, how this is not only something that's essential to get right because it's the right thing to do, but actually there's a bottom line impact on their businesses.
So Robert, Sandra, and I looked at the applications, had a lot of discussion, and based on the nominations presented, we chose GE as the winner of this award.
This is really such a tremendous honor for us, and I think we speak for all of GE, certainly for the Global Law and Policy Group, and I'm pretty sure Alex would agree, our General Counsel, that this is just a tremendous honor, but more than anything, I think demonstrates the importance of partnership, right? The partnership that we feel with Reed Smith, and it's obviously a shared value, felt on the other side. And for those of you who are here, I was thinking as I thought, this is such a tremendous event. It really is. So congratulations to you all. Congratulations to Reed Smith for doing this. This is a big deal. And so for those of you who are here and maybe aren't at the leadership level that decided to have this event, just feel really happy that you're at a law firm that shares the values and values diversity and inclusion. And we look forward to many more years of partnership on this and moving the needle together to increase diversity and inclusion in the legal profession.